The views and opinions expressed by the host, guests, and callers do not necessarily represent those of the Black Talk Media Project, Black Talk Radio Network, sponsors, or advertisers. Welcome to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, and I'm so glad that I could come at you this Friday evening in perfect health. I have no complaints, and I hope that your life is going well as well. Tonight, we have a program. In the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about the young man, Davontae Sanford, who has been wrongfully imprisoned in Michigan. And, you know, we are going to really focus on his case a lot, sort of like what we did with the Scott sisters, and because this is a tragic story. And, you know, most of my listeners, you guys know how I feel about the injustice system here in America. It is far from perfect, and, you know, it seems like they never want to acknowledge mistakes. They never want to correct the mistakes, you know, and they just seem to have no conscience. Some of these people, they'll let innocent people, knowing that they innocent, sit in prison on technicalities and or failure to, you know, give them a new trial. It's just all kind of mess. And so, you know, his Davontae's story was brought to me by a longtime member of the Black Talk Radio Network, Miss Delaproser. Y'all guys know her, as she makes a lot of posts in her blogs. And so I started looking at this case a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, it's just a tragedy. It's just a tragedy. But we know that when people of like mind, who have strong wills, who set their minds to try to correct the injustice, that it can be done. It is not hopeless. We saw that in the Scott sisters case, with many internet bloggers, internet radio hosts, you know, doing what they can to inform the public, to circulate petitions and everything. And I have to say, you know, this case is, you know, it rises to the level of injustice of what we saw with the Scott sisters. Now, Davontae hasn't been locked up for 20 plus years, and we hope that we can prevent that and get him out, you know, pretty soon. So, you know, tonight we're going to talk to his mother, Miss Tamiko Sanford. And because there's a lot of questions, and one of the things interesting about this case, there's not a lot written about it. If you go to like Google News, which pulls in, you know, all the information from local newspapers that's online, and, you know, what people pretty much know, Google News is a good resource to get news from all over the world. And when I type in Davontae Sanford's name, I don't get much. I don't get too many articles, so there's not a lot that has been put out there by the media on this case. And so I feel like, you know, it is the duty of the Black Talk Radio Network, myself as an internet radio host, and I feel like others who have the same capabilities that I have, that you guys should really pick up on this case. So we're going to talk to Miss Sanders, who is on the line. She's going to give us some of the details about this case, answer, you know, some questions, give us a status report where things are right now. And there's also a campaign, which we talked about before, a writing campaign, which we'll get into later, that people, the public, can participate in to try to make a difference in Davontae Sanford's case. But first, let me go ahead and welcome Miss Sanford to Black Talk Radio. Welcome, Miss Sanford.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. All things considering, how are you doing tonight?
I take day by day. It get hard some days, but I take day by day, and I just continue to try to keep my faith and to just believe that the truth will come out one day.
Well, I would just like to encourage you to never give up the faith, never give up hope, because I have seen cases like Davontae's have a positive outcome. And, you know, so just you know, keep your spirits up, for not only your sake, but for your son's sake as well. Let's get into his case. Davontae, when did Davontae get arrested for this crime?
Davontae got arrested for this crime September the 17th of 2007.
Now, when I was discussing this case with a caller a couple of days ago, and he, brought up an issue, and we were saying, okay, if this went down in 2007, and he's 16 years old now, how old was he when he was arrested?
Davontae, at the time of his arrest, he was 14. He turned 15 in November of that year.
Okay. Now, what exactly, for those who haven't heard about his case, what exactly was he charged with?
Davontae was charged with 4 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of attempt murder, and he was also charged with carrying a felony firearm.
What was that last charge?
He was charged with a felony firearm, a gun.
A felony firearm. Now, I'm not that well versed on Michigan firearm laws. I just wonder. I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It was a felony, so they said it was a firearm, as far as the weapon that the victims was killed with. So they charged him with that also. Okay.
Now, look, again, like I stated at the beginning of the program, there has not been a whole lot written about his case, and so, I've been trying to find some details and everything. Now, some of the information I found was saying that he was coerced to confess to killing 4 people in a rumored drug house on the Detroit's east side. Is it true that Davontae has some developmental issues?
Yes, sir, it is. Davontae reads on the 2nd and the 3rd grade level. Davontae had to take transportation to school for special ed kids. Davontae was always a hyperactive child. He was a child that had a mind basically as a kid. He never had a mind as the age he was. He was 14 at the time of the arrest, but he acted like he was 8 or 9 years old.
And when did they come to your home and arrest him, or did they pick him up somewhere else?
No, sir. At the time of the murder, they walked outside and asked Detroit police what was going on. A couple sergeants and homicides from Detroit police told Davontae, you know what's going on. They took Davontae downtown, basically to the station. They questioned Davontae without a parent there or a lawyer there. Some of the words that was brought on the statement was never wrote out. The statement was typed out. And when I finally had a chance to talk to my son about what was going on, Davontae said, Mama, they told me to help them and tell them what they telling me to say so that they can go home because they tired of the victim's family calling their phone.
Okay, let me clarify some things. So, where these murders happen, you guys live near there or on the same street? I mean, how did they come to question? Oh, so you do?
Yes, we used to. We live approximately 2 blocks away. At the time that it happened, I left and I went to the store. I seen everything taped off at the time. Davontae was in the hall with my mother. I came back in and I said, we call him Man. I said, Man, something happened on Runyon. He jumped up. I said, lay down. This don't have anything to do with you. I left, came home, and about an hour or 2 after the fact, my mother was like, here's the car. And I told Davontae, don't go outside. Davontae went outside and talked to the police, and the police took him downtown.
And as you stated earlier, they proceeded to question him without a parent and without a lawyer. Now, you said that, okay, the statement was typed for him?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The statement was typed for Davontae, but they had Davontae to sign it. But, as I said, Davontae couldn't read, so I know Davontae actually couldn't read what was on the statement.
So he couldn't read what was on the statement. In all likelihood, he didn't write it. It was not in his words, right? I would assume.
No, sir, it was not. No, sir, it was not. It was typed out.
Okay, and so I mean, when you found out, I mean, you told us how you found out. So what happens next? I mean, you go down to the station, pick him up. Does he get released? What happens?
I called Davontae. I called down there. They let me talk to Davontae. Davontae said, "No, Mama." He said, "I'm doing good." He said, "I'm eating." He said, "They feed me Coney Island. I'm playing on the computer." He said, "I'm having fun." Davontae discussed another homicide case with me, which at the time was my friend, and gave me details that I didn't know about. So that next day or whatever, they brought Davontae home. Davontae came and laid across my bed, told me all the details about the murder, how they had shown him pictures of the murders, of the bodies on the camera. Within 2 hours later, they came back to my house, and they said, "Oh, Miss Sanford," they said, "we just want Davontae to look at these pictures." They said, "You don't have to come." They said, "He will be back in 2 hours." 2 hours passed. I called downtown. They said, "Oh, your son has been transferred to juvenile. He's been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempt murder." And it was money, larceny, and it was a lot of other counts at that time also.
Okay. Now, at what point, because I read some things about the attorney that represented him once the case did go to trial, and can you tell us a little bit about the attorney? Because some of what I read was like he did not provide Davontae with adequate defense, and I've also read that actually the state presented a very weak case. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, during the time when my son was incarcerated and we was fighting the trial, I hired a lawyer named Robert Slamica who was paid $10,000. Slamica told us to take a plea. Davontae never wanted to take a plea. Slamica told us that they had too much information and evidence on my son, so the best thing was for me to do was let my son take a plea so he could see daylight again. I followed the lawyer because I thought the lawyer was my best advice because I never dealt with anything like this before.
Understandable.
And as we came back on appeal, all the evidence that defending lawyer Slamica said that they had on my son never existed. Slamica used to tell me that he was going to see my son, never went to see my son. We'd be at court in the hallway. He never wanted to talk to me. He was always getting on the elevator with the prosecutor and Detroit police. So as my son's trial was over, I did a little research on my own about Slamica.
Okay.
And the research that came out was that my son was not the only victim that Slamica had done it to. That he had also done it to a man named Eddie Floyd that spent 17 years in jail for a rape that didn't even he was not even the person that raped somebody. And then it was just all kind of complaints on there about Slamica, that how he had did, other people that he served as their attorney. But I was not aware of this. But, like I said, when I started doing the background, I started seeing Eddie Lloyd's name came up, and then it was other people talking about how he did their sister-in-laws and their brothers. So, no, we got real bad, he gave us real bad advice, and he did not represent my son the way he should have represented my son.
I mean, there's a saying that hindsight is 20/20, and just knowing how